Illinois in Focus Daily. Good morning. We are recording here Tuesday in Chicago, the second day of the Democratic National Convention, and pretty busy day yesterday for the first day of the convention. A lot to tackle. We'll obviously review some of what was said during the main speeches last night, but earlier on in the day, Monday, you had the Illinois Democrats hold a breakfast where they rallied the party faithful to essentially get more Democrats in office, including Vice President Kamala Harris, who is accepting her nomination at the DNC here in Chicago later on this week with her vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz. So a lot to tackle here. Of course, yesterday morning, Democrats all across the state of Illinois heading to a hotel for a breakfast and for an array of speeches, including measures discussed that they say are they're championing in the state of Illinois that they want to see across the country. So here with Illinois in Focus Daily, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us as we broadcast here from Chicago each morning. Now, let's get to some of what was said yesterday. You had Governor J.B. Pritzker address the audience and share some of his thoughts, in particular, about the policies he's helped enact. But he also gave a little bit of a history lesson in as far as how many Democratic governors have gone 2 terms, if not more, and a bit of a preview of maybe what he's looking to do as governor for a possible 3rd term.
For the last 50 years, we've had more Republican governors than we have had Democratic governors, and more years of Republican rule in the governorship than we have had Democratic governors. It seems crazy, but it's true that when I serve out just the end of this 2nd term, I will be the longest serving Democratic governor in the history of Illinois. So I'm not suggesting that I want to try to beat Jim Thompson's 14-year record. My wife's not here, and I don't want anybody talking to her about this. But she is my term limit, so if all of you want to talk to her and convince her one way or another, by the way, you're welcome to do that. But
so the governor went on to talk about the values that he says were instilled in him by his family, in particular by his mother, where he discussed, the issues of family and policy and rights and a whole host of other things.
My mother was a nurse and an activist marching on behalf of LGBTQ rights and on behalf of reproductive rights. Frankly, she was fighting for societal change before her time. And I whenever I think of her, and she passed away in 1982, but whenever I think of her, I think I have so much more still to do to fight for women's rights and LGBTQ rights. And frankly, whenever we accomplish anything, I think she is maybe looking down and applauding what we're getting done in Illinois. So thank you. So you call it nature or call it nurture, but those values, fighting for personal freedoms, for our veterans, for health care that everyone deserves, for a chance to make a better life for your family. Well, that's how I was raised, and that's what I believe, and that is why I'm a Democrat. Those same values and that passion define who Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are. And I don't need to tell you that if we fight hard enough, in 78 days, we will defeat Donald Trump and make real progress for working families across America. So I know it's early in the morning, but I got to ask you, are you ready for the fight? Yes! Illinois Democrats, are you ready for the fight? Yes! Let's go get them. Enjoy the convention, everyone.
The governor rallying Democrats at their breakfast yesterday morning, and the governor was joined by other elected officials, including Eric Sorensen, a U.S. congressman in the Quad Cities and Rockford area, and he shared some of his thoughts on his history, where he came from, and Democrats' philosophy in general.
I remember hearing that in 2008. When we went and did that unthinkable thing and we voted for Barack Obama, people said that we weren't ready for that. Well, I'll tell you what, we proved them all wrong when I became the first out LGBTQ member of Congress in Illinois' history. Now, I'll tell you, I'm the only meteorologist, too. But I spent 2 decades of my life in Rockford and in the Quad Cities talking to farmers about climate change. And when you think about this, I was talking to farmers about climate change, and I just got endorsed by the Illinois Farm Bureau.
So Sorensen championing that endorsement. Obviously, it's every 2 years that members of Congress are elected. So we'll see how he fares in the November 5th election. U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth also took the stage at the breakfast yesterday. And by the way, this breakfast was just across the street, across the Chicago River from Trump Hotel. Which made for an interesting kind of split screen there. But Duckworth took the stage, talked to Democrats about policies that she's looking to enact, including policies impacting the Second Amendment.
Gwen just talked about education and kids. We understand the kind of policies that work for working families. It is very different than what Republicans want to do. And if you look at at what they're saying that they want to do things like eliminate the Department of Education. Unbelievable. You know, our policies build communities, we move people forward, we create opportunities for families to succeed. By being a stronghold of organized labor, we protect workers' rights. We raised the minimum wage before most of the rest of the country did to $15 an hour. And guess what? The sky didn't fall, people didn't flee. We actually continue to grow our economy. We are safeguarding reproductive rights, not just for the people of Illinois, but for everybody around us and all over the country. Because we believe that no one, certainly no government official, should ever come between a woman and her right to make decisions about her own body. And here in Illinois, we also know that valuing human life also means passing common sense gun legislation that makes us all safer. And you know, Bobby and I, for the longest time, have introduced and reintroduced, and I'm going to continue to reintroduce, a national FOID card program, common sense legislation. I hear all the time from gun owners.
So you've got Duckworth talking about that, and she went on to say that she hears that gun owners don't want the government to know that they have a firearm, but then she makes the equivocation that if you have a hunting license, then government knows you have a firearm, but the Second Amendment, advocates will say that the Second Amendment's not about hunting, and we can have that conversation at another time. But they had featured speakers, including Cory Booker from the U.S. Senate. They also had Tim Walz's wife, who was there, Gwen Walz, and she addressed the crowd as well. But you also had questions and a gaggle of sorts, and you could see all of this at America's Talking Network. So if you don't like the clips and you like to watch the raw stuff, you can go and check this out at America's Talking Network on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you can get these updates. But of course, all of this was in the morning before President Joe Biden was set to address the convention Monday night. And Biden, obviously, the history is he's running for re-election, has that debate with Trump. But then after the attempted assassination on Trump and a successful Republican National Convention, the Sunday after that, Biden announced that he was not seeking re-election and endorsed Kamala Harris. But Duckworth said that, the speech is really a send-off for Biden.
Done is what George Washington did, stepped away from the halls of power for the good of the nation. And I spent part of Friday with him in the Oval Office. I think Speaker Welch was there with me when he used his Antiquities Act to declare a national monument in Springfield for the 1908 race riots. We're going to give him all the flowers. We're going to talk about the fact that he's probably the greatest labor president, the greatest renewal president we've had, and we're going to continue to support him. And you're going to see a big party tonight for him. Hi, I'm Marianne.
And again, you had Duckworth essentially equate Biden to George Washington stepping down from power. And an interesting display last night when Biden took the stage, a bunch of signs saying, "We love you, Joe," chants, "We love you, Joe." It makes somebody think as to if there was such love for Biden and an appreciation of who he was as president, why is he not the candidate seeking a second term? But Duckworth said that Biden's not going to be riding off into the sunset.
He's about getting his agenda across the finish line in the time that he has left, and I think he's going to be even more active post-presidency with getting many of his agenda done. So yes, we're going to celebrate his achievements, but I think for me, he's going to be like a Jimmy Carter with this great work that he's going to continue past the presidency. So he was just upbeat and energized on Friday.
Again, you've got Duckworth taking questions, and even Speaker Welch taking questions, Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch, and he reiterated some of what he said at the Illinois State Fair last week about how they want more elected Democrats in the Illinois General Assembly. Here's Speaker Welch talking more about that.
Listen, I feel great about the 78, and we've done a lot of great things together here in the last 2 years. We have continued the progress that we started when I first became Speaker, but I do believe that we can elect more Democrats in 24. You heard Eric Sorensen say he's a great meteorologist, folks, and the winds right now favor Democrats performing well in November. And we're going to do everything we can to elect Democrats who share our vision for what Illinois should look like. There's a lot of progress that we can continue to make on women's rights, workers' rights, labor rights, you name it. There's still more work to be done.
I was able to get a question in during that gaggle yesterday morning and wanted to get reaction to what Republicans from Illinois were saying last week in the run-up to the DNC, that essentially voters and consumers are going to have to come back to reality after the DNC to face high prices and continued inflation.
Can you address that? Are those concerns legit? Are people going to have to face reality after the convention?
So here's how I respond to what the other party has said. Let's remember how the former president mishandled the COVID crisis. Let's remember how he made it a divisive issue while he was president. It took President Joe Biden to come into office and to handle that crisis properly. It took Joe Biden to renew this country and put us on the right path. What we have seen is unprecedented job growth under this president. We've seen unprecedented investment in America through the Infrastructure Act. We've seen so many great things happen under President Biden, things that we haven't seen since FDR. And so what we have to do is base things on facts, not rhetoric and innuendo, and look at the record and know that we're moving in the right direction, and we want to continue moving in that direction. And that's forward, not backward. Thank you all so much.
You heard a couple of comparisons to Biden being like FDR. We even heard being like Jimmy Carter or being like George Washington. But of course, on the streets Sunday, before the official kickoff of the convention, you had protests on the streets in Chicago. A lot of the messaging about Free Palestine and the conflict in Gaza, and a heavy police presence on the streets as well, as you have the protesters working to have their voice be heard. And the continued march down the streets on Sunday. And then you had, of course, yesterday, even more protesters show up and a lot of signage. And maybe you've seen some of the other video that's circulated where protesters did breach part of that barrier that had been set up for this national security event. But obviously, a lot of the different voices that were being chanted, Free Palestine, abortion, LGBTQ rights. But really, the war in Gaza is what seems to be the loudest of the issues, and Senator Tammy Duckworth responded to that during the press gaggle as to what exactly should be going on in Gaza.
Well, I think that what's happening in Gaza is absolutely a humanitarian crisis. I've been calling for a mutual ceasefire. That's what has to happen. So far, the rejections of the ceasefire deal has come from the Hamas side of things, but we do need to continue to support our ally Israel. At the same time, we need to remember the hostages need to come home. Many of them have died in captivity, but we also have to work on getting humanitarian aid into Gaza. Something that I've been working on now for quite a while is to get more aid directly into Gaza so that it is not stopped by IDF forces, so that it can actually get to the people. That's where my focus is.
So some of the Q&A during yesterday's breakfast, definitely want to get there. That's why we're doing this earlier on in the morning with Illinois in Focus Daily to keep you updated. But we've got another breakfast that we're heading to and that we will be bringing to you. So be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the raw content from these breakfasts and the gaggles. But also wake up each and every morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for America's Talking Network. Yesterday was day one of the Democratic National Convention, where you had a whole array of speakers taking to the podium, talking about Joe Biden, about Kamala Harris, and also very critical of Donald Trump. And that was something that seemed to be just a running theme. So here's some highlights. Michigan State Senator Mallory McElroy, she brought out a large book, a prop of sorts, of Project 2025 that Democrats are working to connect to Trump. And she also discussed what she said is a fear of a lot of Democrats that if Trump gets into office, he's going to use the Department of Justice against his political opponents.
Donald Trump would be able to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents. He could even turn the FBI into his own personal police force. That is not how it works in America. That's how it works in dictatorships.
But you've got Republicans pointing to the Department of Justice having used the FBI to raid Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, charging him in New York State with crimes that were misdemeanors, beefed up to felonies, and a whole host of other things. So that's something that's obviously being criticized from last night's speech. But it wasn't just elected officials from other parts of the country taking the stage. You even had Kamala Harris take the stage briefly last night, just to kind of welcome the crowd and gear everybody up to hear from President Joe Biden, who she is aiming to replace after he announced that he is not seeking a second term for the presidency.
And looking out at everyone tonight, I see the beauty of our great nation. People from every corner of our country and every walk of life are here, united by our shared vision for the future of our country. And this November, we will come together and declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward.
And the United Center packed with Democrats from all across the country. Of course, being there earlier on in the day, seeing how empty it was inside the convention hall, then seeing the wide shots on TV, definitely a lot of passion at the United Center. But the array of speakers continued. A pretty jam-packed lineup last night, including former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who lost to Donald Trump in 2016.
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial. And when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions. As vice president, Kamala sat in the Situation Room.
And you can hear people chanting, "Lock him up." Which, when that was happening under the 2016 Trump campaign, when rally goers were saying lock her up. That was widely criticized. And Trump even, acknowledged recently that he was told that he should have locked Hillary Clinton up when he got elected in 2016, but he said that wouldn't have been good for the country. 4 years later, we kind of see the history that there is. But after, of course, Hillary Clinton took the stage, you had other speakers, Jamie Raskin, a member of Congress, addressing the crowd as well, talking about Trump and Republicans, criticizing them and giving them a new moniker.
Donald Trump fell asleep.
There we go.
Now we fight in our time to defend our freedom and our democracy against the banana Republicans who have converted Lincoln's party into a dangerous cult of personality.
So the banana Republicans, that might be a new catchphrase that Democrats use throughout the week. We'll obviously see how that goes. But clearly the DNC has had to change pace within the past month. The platform was reported to have contained, the President Joe Biden's second term several times throughout it. Surely they had to clean that up before they approved it. And some of the other platform issues, including issues impacting the Second Amendment, as we heard in the previous segment. Tammy Duckworth talking about wanting to get a national FOID card, the FOID card being an Illinois, ID, that state police issue, but a whole host of other things in that platform as well. So you can seek that out and unpack that. But you've got Joe Biden, who ultimately was the candidate until he stepped down. So the DNC had to really change gears, and they featured him as the speaker on Monday night. Here's just some of what he had to say.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, President and Vice President of the United States?
A lot of signs saying, we love you, Joe. We love you, Joe. A lot of chanting. But Biden went on to talk about his history and his accomplishments with the economy.
We've gone from economic crisis to the strongest economy in the entire world. Record 16 million new jobs. Record small business growth. Record high stock market. Record high 401ks. Wages up. And inflation down, way down, and continuing to go down.
But clearly a lot of concerns and critics saying that the economy is not great. You've got inflation that continues to go up. While it might not go up at the rate it was right after Biden took office, you still have inflation inching upwards even more, not as the rate it was before, but still people are paying more than they were 4 years ago. He also talked about the border situation, something that's of a lot of concern for people across the country, including in Chicago, here as the DNC is ongoing, with non-citizen migrants continuing to take taxpayer resources.
He continues to lie about the border. Here's what he won't tell you. Trump killed the strongest bipartisan border deal in the history of the United States.
Biden also, he talked about...
Then I had to take executive action.
He talked about trying to shore up the porous border after saying that Trump killed the bipartisan deal in Congress, but that bipartisan deal had a lot of things that the majority of Republicans said was not going to be good for the country, including possibly giving amnesty to a lot of people who are here. But more from Biden.
Then I had to take executive action. The result of the executive action I took, border encounters have dropped over 50%. In fact, there are fewer border crossings today than when Donald Trump left office.
And people may look at those numbers and scratch their heads because if you look at it since Biden took office and the jump of border crossings, let alone the gotaways that you don't know exactly how many there were. But the final moments from the convention last night, Harris hugging Biden And now we get ready for day number 2. So we'll get you the latest, of course. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network and Illinois in Focus daily. As I'm on the road here, different setup. As the sun comes up behind me, we'll definitely be back at it tomorrow here with Illinois in Focus daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell at America's Talking Network.